You remember the moment. Radar walks slowly into the operating room, helmet in his hands, and every gloved surgeon goes still. Then comes the sentence that emptied living rooms all across America on March 18, 1975, a plane, the Sea of Japan, no survivors. But what if that plane had landed? What if the door had opened in Bloomington, Illinois, instead of closing over the water? A wife named Lorraine, 3 children, one he had never met. A small Midwestern town waiting on the porch, because the war Henry Blake survived was not the one waiting for him at home. Before we go anywhere, we have to sit for a minute with what actually happened that night, because it explains everything that came after. The episode was called Abyssinia, Henry. It aired as the season 3 finale on CBS, and by the time it was over, a country that had been laughing at the swamp still, and the fishing hat and the paperwork Henry Blake never quite managed to finish was staring at a black screen in silence. McLean Stevenson was leaving the show. That much viewers eventually understood. What they did not know, sitting in their wood-paneled living rooms with rabbit ear antennas and the TV guide open on the coffee table, was that the show's writers and producers had made a decision the network did not want them to make. They were not going to let Henry go home. Larry Gelbart and Gene Reynolds shaped that ending, and by most accounts the final line about the plane and the Sea of Japan was added quietly, protected from studio interference, and handed to the cast at the last possible moment. Alan Alda, Loretta Swit, Gary Berghoff, the rest of the surgeons standing in that OR set, learned what was coming only shortly before the cameras rolled. The reactions you see on their faces were not entirely acting. That is part of why the scene still lands so hard almost 50 years later. There was a reason for it. In a war, sometimes the people who go home do not actually make it. That was the note the writers wanted to leave families with. They wanted the audience to feel, just for a second, what a telegram used to feel like. And America felt it. CBS switchboards lit up. Letters poured in. Some viewers were furious. Others wrote long, aching notes about their own fathers, their own brothers, their own husbands who once boarded a plane home and never arrived. It became one of the first times a network sitcom killed a beloved lead off-screen. Without warning, without cushioning. Fewer viewers remember that the ending was almost cut, that it was fought over, that in a slightly different world, Henry Blake would have stepped off that plane, hugged Lorraine on a tarmac, and walked back into a life waiting for him in Bloomington, Illinois. So let us go there. Let us open the door the writers closed. Not to rewrite history, but to walk down the road television refused to walk. What would that homecoming actually have looked like? Picture Bloomington on a Tuesday afternoon in the early 1950s. This is the version the show never gave us, so we build it from what we know. Main Street with its brick storefronts and striped awnings. A Rexall drugstore on the corner with a soda fountain still humming. A wood-paneled station wagon parked in the driveway of a 2-story house with a screen door that never quite closes right. Lorraine Blake is standing on the front porch. She has an apron dusted with flour and a dish rag over her shoulder because she was baking when the phone call came. A taxi rounds the corner. She sees it before the children do. And then Henry steps out. He is thinner than the photograph on the mantel. His uniform hangs a little loose. He has a duffel bag over one shoulder and a stack of papers under his arm that nobody will ever open. The 2 older children, Molly and Andrew, freeze on the lawn. They are shy the way kids get when a familiar face has become unfamiliar. And the baby, the one he has never held, is not a baby anymore. She is walking. She looks up at this stranger her mother is now crying into, and she does not know what to do with her small face. This is not the homecoming Hollywood taught us to expect. There is no swelling music. There is a screen door and a duffel bag, and a woman who hugs her husband too long, then too briefly, because she does not know which is the right amount for a man who has spent 3 years watching teenagers die on a table. Henry Blake, the man who spent every episode wanting to go home, is now home. And already, before he has even walked through the front door, you can feel it. He has no idea who he is when he is not the commanding officer of the 47th. The show never had to answer that question. In this version, it is the first question waiting for him inside the house. The morning he tries to go back to work is the morning the trouble really starts. Henry was an obstetrician before Korea. That was the practice he left behind. A quiet little office above a bank, a green metal filing cabinet, an appointment book with looping handwriting, a leather examination table, a nurse who has been keeping the lights on while he was away. He puts on a clean shirt, he drives to the office, he unlocks the door, and within an hour, the nurse hands him a chart and asks him to see his first post-war patient. It is a routine visit. A young mother, healthy, uncomplicated. Henry washes his hands the way he washed them in the swamp before a shift. more scrub than a peacetime doctor needs. He walks into the exam room and his hands are shaking. He has not held a newborn since Korea. Every instinct he sharpened at the 47th, every reflex he built for meatball surgery under artillery fire, is wrong here. He is overqualified for peacetime and unqualified for calm. That afternoon, the town's family doctor asks him to consult on a routine appendectomy. Henry says yes because saying yes is what doctors do. He stands over the patient. The overhead lights are too clean. There is no shouting. There are no choppers. And he sweats through his shirt before the first incision. The show never had to reckon with this Henry. The show sent him home in a plane that never landed and left the audience to imagine a happy ending. But if he had landed, if he had stepped back into that little office above the bank, the truth is this: home does not fit him anymore, not the way it used to. And the letters keep coming. Letters from a place he thought he had left behind. They arrive in blue airmail envelopes with red and white borders around the edges. The Bloomington post office knows his name now. The mailman gets used to seeing the return address. That strange string of numbers and abbreviations that mean nothing to anyone in Illinois. Radar writes every week, not long letters, short updates. Who transferred out? Who transferred in? What Klinger tried this month? What Father Mulcahy said at the last service? Hawkeye writes when he is drunk, which is more often than Henry expects. And those letters are the hardest to read, because Hawkeye writing sober is a different man than Hawkeye writing at 3 in the morning. Trapper never writes, not once. Henry keeps them all in a shoebox in the bedroom closet, behind his old golf shoes, and he reads them at night after Lorraine falls asleep. He does not write back, not for months, then not for a year. One evening, Lorraine is putting away laundry and she finds the box. She holds it in her hands for a long time. She does not open it. She puts it back exactly where it was. She never mentions it. That is its own kind of conversation. The show taught us that the 47th was a family. That was the emotional promise of the whole series. In this version, family is what Henry cannot bring himself to write back to, because writing back would mean admitting something he cannot yet say out loud, that he misses the war, not the death, not the fear, but the certainty, the knowing what he was for. And then, one Tuesday, a letter arrives that he cannot leave in the shoebox. The radio is playing in the kitchen when the telegram comes. It is the evening news, Cronkite's voice steady and familiar underneath the hum of a percolator. That particular blend of World War and world weather that defined a 1950s American evening. Lorraine is at the counter. Henry is at the table with the paper, half reading, half listening. The doorbell rings, and a boy on a bicycle hands him a yellow envelope. Henry knows what a yellow envelope means before he opens it. Every family in that decade did. We can honor the real timeline of the show without inventing tragedies that do not belong to us. So let it be this. Radar has rotated home. Trapper is long gone. Frank Burns has unraveled the way Frank Burns eventually did. Henry learns that someone he served with, someone whose name he had almost stopped saying out loud, is not coming back. He sits at the kitchen table for a long time, with the telegram open in front of him. The coffee in his cup goes cold. Lorraine puts a hand on his shoulder and does not ask. She has learned not to ask. She has learned that some questions cannot be answered by a man who left himself somewhere on the other side of the world. He folds the telegram. He puts it in the shoebox with the letters. He does not sleep that night. He walks the length of the backyard in his slippers, watching his breath in the porch light, listening to the sound of freight trains moving through the dark, somewhere beyond the tree line. The war was supposed to be the nightmare. Home was supposed to be the reward. Nobody warned him it would work in reverse. Nobody warned him that the men he served with would keep dying on him from 12 time zones away, one telegram at a time, long after his own uniform had been folded into a cedar chest in the attic. And Bloomington is starting to notice. The doctor who used to laugh too loud at Rotary Club meetings has been quiet at the last 3. His patients are talking. His neighbors are talking. Something has changed in Henry Blake. And this small Midwestern town, in the years before America had any real language for what he was carrying, does not know what to call it. The invitation comes on cream-colored paper with a gold border. The Memorial Day service at the county courthouse. Would Dr. Blake, decorated veteran of the Korean War, please say a few words? He accepts. Lorraine irons his suit. Molly polishes his shoes. Andrew wants to know if he will wear his medals, and Henry looks at his son for a long moment and says, maybe just one. The morning of, the town square is full. A high school band is playing. A church basement pancake breakfast has just wrapped up. There's a 4th of July feel to it even in May. Crepe paper on the fire truck. Small flags in every planter along the sidewalk. Henry walks up to the podium. He looks out at faces he has known his whole life. He opens his mouth to speak, and he cannot get through the first sentence. He tries twice. The microphone catches his breath. He steps back, nods to the mayor, and walks off the stage. Nobody boos. Nobody moves. The band, mercifully, starts playing again. Some old marching tune from a war that had a clean ending. Bloomington is a kind town. It handles it the way small towns handle these things. Nobody says a word to his face. But the dinner invitations slow down. The Rotary meetings feel a little quieter when he walks in. The women at the grocery store speak a little more softly around him, the way people speak around a widow. He is not a scandal. He is something worse in a town this size. He is a story people whisper on the sidewalk after church. The show gave Henry Blake warmth and comic timing. It gave him the fishing hat and the golf clubs in the corner of his office and the ability to sign off on anything Radar put in front of him. In this version, the show gives him the silence that followed thousands of returning veterans in the early 1950s, before anyone knew what to call it, before the words shell shock or combat fatigue or the ones we use now had settled into the language of ordinary people. He is alone with it, almost. There is one man in Bloomington who understands exactly what Henry Blake is carrying, and Henry does not even know it yet. The garage across the street is always lit, a single bare bulb hanging over a workbench, a can of Pabst sweating on a paint-stained shop rag, the smell of motor oil and cold concrete. A Ford up on blocks that has been up on blocks for as long as anyone in the neighborhood can remember. The man who owns it is older than Henry by maybe 15 years. He is quiet, missing 2 fingers on his left hand. He fought in the Pacific in the last war, though he has never once said the word Guadalcanal or Iwo Jima or Peleliu or any of the others out loud, at least not to anyone in Bloomington. One Saturday afternoon, Henry is walking his dog past the garage, and the man looks up from the engine and says, without preamble, "Come hold this for me." Henry holds it. They work in silence for 2 hours. The next Saturday, Henry comes back. And the Saturday after that, weeks pass. They do not talk about the war. They talk around it, about the price of gasoline, about the Cardinals game on the radio, about whether the new Ford models are cheaper made than the old ones, about a song by Patti Page that keeps coming through the workshop radio, about their kids. The neighbor has 2 grown sons who moved to Chicago. He does not see them often. Slowly, without either of them naming what is happening, Henry starts sleeping through the night. He does not wake at 3 a.m. anymore, listening for choppers that are not coming. Lorraine notices. She does not say anything either, but on Sunday she puts an extra plate out at the table, and when Henry looks at her, confused, she just nods across the street. The neighbor comes for pot roast. He eats quietly. He compliments the biscuits. He leaves before the sun goes down. The show taught us for a decade that Henry Blake's family was Hawkeye and Trapper and Radar. That was the emotional gravity of the whole series. In this version, the man who saves him is a stranger who never watched him laugh at the swamp still, someone who never sat in his rumpled office or forged a signature on a leave request, just a man who knew, without needing to be told, what the silence in Henry Blake's face meant. And then, one autumn afternoon, a car with Illinois plates and a familiar face pulls into the driveway. It is late 1953. The leaves in the yard are the color of a copper kettle. Bloomington has that early evening chill that means the furnace will come on soon. Lorraine is at the sink washing dishes when she sees the car through the window. She does not recognize it at first. Then the driver's door opens, and a young man in a corporal's uniform steps out, holding a teddy bear in one hand and his cap in the other. Lorraine puts down the dish towel. She walks slowly to the front door. She opens the screen without saying a word. Henry is on the porch by then, because Henry always knew Radar's footsteps, even when he could not have known Radar was coming. They stand there for a long moment. Neither of them speaks. Radar shifts the bear from one hand to the other. Henry takes off his glasses and puts them back on. They sit down on the porch steps, and they stay there until the streetlights come on. This is the reunion the audience was denied on March 18, 1975. Not a rescue, not a punchline, not a laugh track. Just 2 men on a porch in Illinois, one of them still a boy, both of them older than they should be, watching the light drain out of a Midwestern sky. Radar finally speaks. He asks the question the show never got to answer. He asks, in that quiet way of his, whether it was worth coming home. Henry does not answer right away. He looks at the kitchen window, at Lorraine framed in yellow lamplight, drying a plate. He hears the small thump of feet upstairs, one of the kids running from the bathroom to the bedroom. He hears the neighbor across the street closing the garage door for the night. He does not answer with words. He puts a hand on Radar's shoulder and squeezes once. That is all. Radar stays for supper. He stays 2 more days. He plays with the baby who is not a baby anymore. He tells Molly and Andrew about their father in a way their father never could, with stories that are careful and true and edited only by the kindness of a young man who understood, even then, what parts of a war a child should never have to hear. And when he drives away on Sunday morning, Henry stands in the driveway for a long time after the car's out of sight, one hand on the mailbox, watching the road empty. Later that night, after the dishes are done, after the kids are asleep, after Lorraine has gone up to bed, Henry sits down in the armchair in the living room. The console television is on with the sound down low, some variety show finishing its last number. His youngest child, the one he never met on any airfield, has come down in her pajamas for a glass of water and has climbed into his lap instead. She falls asleep against his chest. His fishing hat is tipped forward over his eyes. The television glow moves across the wood-paneled wall. Outside, Bloomington is quiet. Somewhere across the world, a war is ending. Somewhere in a writer's room, in a version of history that did happen, a decision has already been made to put Henry Blake on a plane that will never land. But not here. Here, on this couch, in this house, in this small Illinois town, a man is asleep in his armchair with a child on his chest and the television still on. And that is the ending March 18th, 1975 refused to give us.